trouble, 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 trouble.
Welcome everyone, subscribers, viewers of this video, wrestling fans. This is Bill Mack with another edition of Pro Wrestling Unleashed. This is the Impact Wrestling Review for March 1st, 2018. Glad you folks could join me for another video, and as always, thanks for tuning in. And if you're a subscriber, a new subscriber, thank you for subscribing, and if you're not, hey, click on that subscribe button and hit the little bell for notifications, so whenever I do produce a video, you will be able to get that notification for it. We all know how wacky that YouTube can be at times, and I want to make sure that whenever my videos come out, that you subscribers are able to get those notifications out. So thanks once again, like I said, and we'll get right into the Impact Wrestling results. Now, I thought the show was pretty good overall. The storylines were pretty good. Next week, of course, is Crossroads, so you know that they're going to be setting up some of the matchups for that particular special, and I thought that it really did. The show was pretty good overall tonight. At first, we start the show off with Tyrus taking on EC3. Remember last week, as you recall, Tyrus was back with EC3. He thought that he was unstoppable and that he would be able to kind of tip the scale in his favor when the #1 contendership match against Johnny Impact. As we see EC3, Tyrus get into it. Tyrus pushes EC3 down, goes to the back, leaves EC3 to himself. Johnny Impact hits the Starship Pain on EC3 to retain his #1 contendership. So this week, it was a pretty physical matchup. You know, EC3 had the upper hand to begin with. There was a lot of antics and things. You know, EC3 joking with the crowd in the beginning of the matchups. Tyrus took this bout really seriously. But as the midpoint of the match turned, Tyrus started dominating, and he basically dominated the rest of the matchup. He ended up defeating EC3. 1, 2, 3. Tyrus is your winner in the first match to kick off Impact. We see up next a backstage segment. We see Joseph Park, of course, talking to Grandma Jenny on the phone, and he was talking to her. Remember last week what happened? Grandma Jenny came in, and this all basically boils down to Jimmy Jacobs. He, of course, is managing Congo Kong now, and he wants Joseph Park, his alter ego, the Abyss, to come out, and he wants Abyss to take on his monster, Congo Kong. So we see this week Joseph Park's talking to Grandma Jenny on the phone, and he's talking about how he doesn't think that his chances are relatively high against his matchup, and Grandma Jenny seems that she agrees with this as well. And he tells her that he promises Grandma Jenny that he will not allow Abyss to ever come back out again. So now we have a matchup, Phantasma taking on Braxton Sutter. Of course, Phantasma is now the AAA Latin American Heavyweight Champion. I thought the match was decent. It wasn't a very long match, and reason was that, you know, after the match, Braxton Sutter comes out and he starts complaining. He says, "Oh, I didn't even get an entrance tonight. This is what happened since I've gotten back to Impact. This is the way you treat me. Allie's done this. Allie's done that," putting the blame on her. And then then all of a sudden, the Machine, of course, Brian Cage comes out. He comes out and hits the drill claw on Braxton Sutter, and then he just leaves the ring. You see the massive power and strength of Brian Cage. Of course, he debuted a week or so ago. His strength, he looks the part, folks, like I said in my last video, and he continues to basically obliterate whoever steps in his path. I think this is a good way of introducing Brian Cage and showing just how powerful he truly is. We come back from commercial break. We have a Pluto TV rewind of the week, and of course it brings us back to Destination X back in 2006, and this was back when Scott Steiner made his debut in the company. Remember it's been a little over almost 12 years ago that this happened, and remember Scott Steiner made his debut, the first debut of his back then in TNA at Destination X. So then we have a backstage segment. We come back and we see that Mackenzie Mitchell is interviewing Matt Sydal. And last week Matt Sydal had read a scroll after his matchup stating that he was going to challenge Ishimori for the X Division title. He was wanting to become a double champion, and it basically come down to whether Ishimori accepted the challenge. Well, Ishimori comes out during the interview, interrupts the interview, and he himself has a scroll that he presents, and Mackenzie Mitchell reads it. Of course, it's in English, and it refers to Matt Sydal that Ishimori himself would like to challenge Matt Sydal for the Grand Championship because he wants to feel like he's able to go back to Japan, a double champion himself, and show both belts and prove that Matt Sydal is what he quote calls him a choke artist, which you've seen that has sort of triggered Matt Sydal, and that has been his reputation up until the last few weeks, where he has really come out, and since he's come in contact with this so-called spiritual advisor, he has basically had a mindset, and he has come through. So we see that Matt Sydal, I guess, apparently he looks at it and he walks. So we see Matt Sydal more likely will accept the challenge, and he will put up his grand championship against Ishimori, and he will put up the X Division title and for his side. So this is a title versus title matchup. So then we come back. We have the match we wanted to see with Joseph Park taking on Congo Kong. This was a very short match, folks. Joseph Park come out. Joseph Park had very limited very limited offense. You could tell the difference, and it shows through his character the difference in how weak Joseph Park is compared to the Monster Abyss. And Congo Kong, of course, ends up hitting his cannonball on Joseph Park, ends up hitting the top rope splash. He gets the 3 count on Joseph Park. Joseph Park is down. We see Jimmy Jacobs come into the ring. Congo Kong gets Jimmy Jacobs' scarf and he chokes Joseph Park, wanting Joseph Park basically to say, hey, we want you to bring Abyss out. We want you to allow Abyss to come out and play. I want my monster to take on your monster. Come on, Joseph. And he almost chokes Joseph Park out. And he tells Joseph Park, he says, hey, this is only the beginning. So looks like we're going to see that he hasn't given in yet, but we also see that with the Monster Abyss has still yet to show up. I'm banking he will show up sooner rather than later. Up next, we have a segment between LAX and the Cult of Lee, of course. The Cult of Lee are kind of sitting at this poolside, and they had the Mumbai Cats there. And remember the Mumbai Cats back when Impact was in India, doing the India tapings and whatnot. And they are apologizing to the Mumbai Cats because they showed some clips last week where they attacked the Mumbai Cats from behind, thinking they were LAX, and they wanted to apologize. And then we see that Conan walks around the corner and he starts talking to the Cult of Lee. And Trevor Lee says, I think, you coming along isn't a wise thing. And he says, who says I'm alone? And as their backs have turned, it reveals, the LAX reveals that they are indeed under the mask of the Mumbai Cats. Basically, they take Trevor Lee and Caleb Conley. They take him and they put their faces under the water and tell him, and Caleb said, I can't swim. So Conan ends up throwing both, or LAX ends up throwing both Caleb Conley and Trevor Lee into the pool. And he leaves with the title still hanging around his neck. So I like this feud. I want to see what's going to happen with the Cult of Lee, Trevor Lee, and Caleb Conley and LAX. The feud with OVE was over with. Now we're seeing if the Cult of Lee can do any difference. Now remember, they've already got a pin on the LAX, so this remains to be seen on what's going to happen with the Impact Tag Team titles. So we come back from from break, and we see that Alberto El Patron is shown. He's in a suit. He's in a dark room, and he starts discussing about how he feels that Austin Aries, it was in his spot that it was taken, and Johnny Impact. He talks about both Johnny and Austin Aries and how they got the opportunities to where he should have had those opportunities, but he does remind them that no matter whether it's Johnny Impact, whether it's Trevor, it's Johnny Impact, or if it's Austin Aries, when the end of the night comes, or the end of the time, when it's soon enough, he says, "Look, no matter who it is, I'm going to become the Impact Wrestling Champion again, and one of you is going to have to face me." So remains to be seen between Johnny Impact who's going to be the champion when they face Alberto El Patron. It remains to be seen. Up next, we have a matchup which has been the last few weeks. Hanaya the Huntress taking on the Demon Assassin Rosemary. This match was short. Rosemary pretty much dominated the matchup. There was a point where she went to hit the Red Wedding. Hanaya then got some offense on, but it wasn't enough as Rosemary ended up hitting the Red Wedding on Hanaya for the win. We see Rosemary gets the mic and she just talks about how she's the alpha, and she states that she wants to go after the Knockouts Championship and get it back. And we end up hearing Taya Valkyrie. Now, Taya Valkyrie has been out quite a few months. She can't really go into Canada and do her taping. She's not able to go in there, so she hasn't been at the tapings in Canada. So she shows up, and we see her enter into the ring, and she stares Rosemary face to face, and we see that she insults Rosemary, which angers her, and so she doesn't make a move. She goes to step out the ring. Rosemary goes to the other end of the ring, and she's on the outside, and she gets distracted, and while talking to the fans, Valkyrie ends up knocking her off the stage and ends up hitting the Road to Valhalla on Rosemary at the bottom of the ramp, and she just crawls right over the top of Rosemary and just laughs. So here is another feud that we see that is restarted. I want to see this feud. Of course, Talia Valkyrie and we see Rosemary both can wrestle. I want to see this. Rosemary is way over with the crowd. She's one of the crowd favorites. Her and Moose with the Impact audience, and she's an awesome competitor and female wrestler, and it's just always good to watch her matches. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. So then we have a flashback to GWN Network flashback, and this shows us back when Eddie Edwards was taking on Bobby Lashley, who at that time was the Impact Heavyweight Champion. And we see that Eddie Edwards ends up hitting the Boston Knee Party onto Bobby Lashley and covers Bobby Lashley. And that's when Eddie Edwards becomes the Impact Heavyweight Championship. So nice little flashback there from the GWN Network. Up next, we have what's odd is Laura Van Ness's commitment ceremony. Laura Van Ness is going to basically get a commitment to her Knockouts title. It shows a video package of all the failures and things that's happened where Braxton Sutter left her at the altar. Then we see Grado basically tells her he can't marry her because she's Canadian, and it shows her what drove her to the point where she's at. So we see KM come out there. He's supposed to be he said he was an ordained preacher, and he's going to officiate over this commitment ceremony. We see Lauren Van Ness come out, and she's talking, and she says she has them skip to, does anybody have anything they want to say? If they don't want to see this, object to it, to speak now, forever hold their peace. Then all of a sudden, Braxton Sutter shows up. He's got, of course, a neck brace on, suffering from the injuries at the hands of Brian Cage earlier. He states that he loves her, that Allie has really messed things up with a lot of people, and he wants Laura Van Ness and the Impact Knockouts Championship to all live happily ever after. She refuses and rejects it, tells him no until he gets out of the ring and leaves. So then she has KM say it again. Anyone have any objections? And what she is doing is trying to bait Allie to come out. Now she's looking towards the ramp. All of a sudden, we see a figure in black get into the ring and have as a camera. They throw the camera down and flip the hood down to reveal none other than Allie. So Allie takes the black jacket off, and she ends up going after Laura Van Ness, throwing her through the set up for the ceremony. And we see Allie get the best of her. Now, remember, Laura Van Ness has tried getting the drop on Allie quite a few times. So now Allie has turned the tables, and I'm looking forward to seeing Allie go in action, going against Laura Van Ness. That's another match I want to see with the Knockouts division. So then we have a video package that leads up to the heavyweight championship match at Crossroads between Johnny Impact and Austin Aries. It shows, he's what he has Johnny Impact has done. It shows Austin Aries coming in back to the company and winning the Impact Heavyweight Championship, and those two are go on a collision course at next week's Crossroads special. Then we come to the main event. We have Eddie Edwards taking on Sami Callihan, and OVE is, of course, Dave and Jake Christ are at ringside. And of course, with OVE, you have numbers. OVE early gets on interference early on in the match. The ref does all that he can and sends them to the back. They're sent to the back. A good physical matchup between Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan, and we see a lot of back and forth. It was a very physical matchup. I enjoyed it, and so we see Eddie Edwards getting ready to roll up Sami Callihan. Eddie Edwards gets the win. Then we see that Sami Callihan goes to get he hits Eddie Edwards from behind, and then we see in the back Bobby Lashley coming out to the defense, and he's coming out through the backstage area, and we see Jake and Dave Chris attack and prevent Bobby Lashley from coming out to help, Eddie Edwards, which last week, Eddie Edwards and Bobby Lashley both got wins over OVE. And at the Crossroads special, you're going to have a OVE with Sami Callihan take on a tag team of Eddie Edwards and Bobby Lashley. So what happens, and they don't show it, but what I read from the results, and I think these were December's tapings, if I'm not mistaken. What happens is Callihan gets the chair, and he sticks it over the top of Eddie Edwards, and when he ends up hitting the chair, the bat vibrates off, and it ends up hitting Eddie Edwards in the head. And they said it was a legit bust. Now, they didn't show Eddie Edwards what he looked like after the match. They both basically focused on what was going on in the back with Lashley and OVE and just zooming in on a close-up of Sami Callihan. But from what I'm told, remember from the tapings, Eddie Edwards got hurt, got split open. He was bleeding, and Eddie ended up rushing him to the hospital. So, probably by the time the new tapings start, Eddie should be okay. But needless to say, this sets up Crossroads, and whether or not that Eddie's going to be ready for that, it remains to be seen, but it will be next week, the Crossroads special. So that is how the show ends. Now, like I said, overall, it set up some continuing storylines to the Crossroads special, which is next week on Impact on Pop. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Like I said, sorry if you hear any background noise. Of course, when I record these videos, you would figure something would happen. But I hope you folks enjoyed the video. You like it. Like I said, I'm trying this new style of more of a podcast style talk than just me up on a screen talking and showing a picture. So I hope you folks do enjoy the video. If you do, give it a big thumbs up. Like this video. Share this video. Comment and subscribe, share it with others, and for them to subscribe as well. So, thanks, wrestling fans, once again, and until next time with the Impact Wrestling wrap up and Pro Wrestling Unleashed. This is, of course, Bill Mack saying, take it easy.